Thank you. Evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors and directors, and welcome to those people out there in Zoom land to the ordinary council meeting of the Alpineshire Council on Tuesday, the 7th of September 2021. Item 1 on our agenda, the recording and live streaming of council meetings. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All council meetings are filmed with both video and audio being recorded. In common with all narrative during council meetings, verbal responses to congratulations, obituaries and question time will not be recorded in the written minutes. By submitting a question, you consent to your question being read aloud at the meeting. And the reasoning behind recording council meetings is, of course, to hold us more accountable and improve the transparency of council's decision-making to our community. The full meeting is being streamed live on council's YouTube channel and will be available on YouTube channel, this channel shortly after this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Item 2, the acknowledgement of traditional custodians. The Alpineshire Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we are now on, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. We also acknowledge those people who have contributed to the rich fabric of our community and strive to make wise decisions that will improve the quality of life for all. Item 3, confirmation of minutes, the ordinary council meeting on the 3rd of August 2021. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 3rd of August 2021 as circulated be confirmed. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Prime, any comments?
No comment.
Thank you. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. No apologies tonight from our regular lineup. That's good. Now, obituaries and congratulations, and I will start with Councillor Janus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate all our Paralympians. I've taken some evenings off, all other things, just to watch these incredible people who have represented Australia, not only Australia, but their countries, and what a marvellous effort that they've done, and I congratulate them all and all those who have supported them.
I think you're going to get a hand clap from everyone on that one. Councillor Dr. Tony Keeble.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to shout out and congratulate all our parents, all our students and children, and all the teachers and schools and early childhood centres and TAFEs and learning and training centres, the work that they're doing at the moment, at home as much as they can. You know, we had the recent NAPLAN results that came out, and the Northeast Victoria certainly was a shining light with some of those results. And I just want to shout out to everyone that's doing it at home with their students. It is tough at times, but everyone is doing a great job, the best we can. So I just want to shout out to everyone. Thanks.
Councillor Vincent.
None from me, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to do a big shout out and congratulations to the football netball leagues for what was probably one of the toughest seasons they've had to endure with, well, rain for starters, but with all the different restrictions and forever chopping and changing. It's really been a massive season, and it's very unfortunate to see it end prematurely due to the lockdowns. But a massive big thank you to all the volunteers, players, officials and sponsors for the seasons that enabled whatever they could get done through the system and bring on 2022, I say.
Councillor Prime.
No, none from me, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I would like to mention Kim Lancaster, who is a council employee, and it was in the local paper, but I think that it's worth mentioning that she is been put forward as a finalist in the Oz Mumpreneur Awards for her clothing manufacture innovations, and I understand that the finalists, the awards will be announced this week. So best wishes to Kim later in this week when she finds out whether she won anything or not. But congratulations! What a great effort to hold a job, bring up kids, and run a fabulous business like that. Well done, Kim.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. 2 pages before that particular article, there was one that I picked up on, and I'm going to congratulate some Myrtleford teens, Alex Sterling, Ty Palmerson, Callum Hines, Cooper Howden and James Lennox. The article was Myrtleford teams are helping keep it clean. These guys have been out into the pines up at the top of Halls Road, I should say, cleaning up rubbish that no doubt people their parents' age have probably left there. So I think it's a great outcome, I think shout out to those kids in particular, those teens. But I'd also like to compliment the North East media and Alpine Observer and Myrtleford Times on giving us some good news stories. I think that's great as well, especially in these particular times. Thank you. Moving on. Declarations of councillors of conflict of interest. Any conflicts of interest in tonight's proceedings? Thank you. Public questions. I believe we have one question on notice tonight, and it is from the UK VCA, Mary Pike. Following question is, has council had any input in the location of the proposed North East Water new pumping station on Embankment Drive, Mount Beauty? And the second question is council aware that this has raised immense interest in the Kiwa and that a petition is currently being circulated appealing to North East Water for greater community engagement with an eventual relocation to a less obtrusive site? I believe our acting Director of Corporate Performance, Mr. Will Jeremy, may have an answer to the first question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council has not had input into the selection of this as the preferred site by North East Water. However, Council has provided landholder approval and Council has issued a planning permit for the development of this site by North East Water, subject to some planning permit conditions.
Thank you. As far as the second part of this question go, if I read your question correctly, Mary, is council, that is the 7 councillors, yes, we are definitely aware that this has raised immense interest in the Kiwa. And as Mr. Jeremy has just answered, we need some more communication with North East Water and see whether or not we can actually come up with a better sited position for this, maybe with a bit of extra infrastructure involved as well. So I think that probably answers your question, but please, as is always, get in touch with your local councillors or myself if you want any more clarification. Right, moving on. Item 8, presentation of reports by officers. Chief Executive Officer Charlie Bird. I believe we have Neil, is that correct, Mr. Bird? Thank you.
That's correct.
Moving right into the actual meeting itself now. The Acting Director of Assets, Ms. Elaine Burridge. Item 8.2.1, the Buckland Valley Road Ceiling Tender Award.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for road reconstruction and sealing works along a 3.3 kilometre section of the Buckland Valley Road, past the newly constructed Buckland Bridge. The works include road pavement construction, sealing and drainage works. Some background on this item. So in November 2020, councils received a petition from community which contained 35 signatures. Essentially, the petition request of council was to look at reducing the speed along the Buckland Valley Road, south of McCormick's Lane and Devil's Creek Crossing. The petition noted a significant increase in traffic and several accidents on the unsealed section of the road south of the Buckland Bridge over recent years. In addition to the petition, councillors received a number of customer requests to address the hazardous conditions which are frequently present on the unsealed section of the road. Councils carried out traffic counts over 6 weeks over a peak holiday period being December 2020 and January 2021. establishing that there was an average of 273 individual vehicle movements each day along the road, significantly exceeding the threshold of 100 vehicles per day, above which council will give consideration to sealing an unsealed road, subject to the availability of funding. With the Buckland Bridge project being completed under budget this year, in March of this year, an opportunity was identified to utilise unspent funds, external funding, on other qualifying works. Funding partners for the Buckland Bridge project being DELP and also being Regional Roads Victoria are supportive of the unspent funds being used to reconstruct and seal the 3.3 kilometres of the Buckland Valley Road. DELP is a major user of the Buckland Valley Road, of which they use to access 320,000 hectares of state forest to undertake fire management activities. With the funding available to them last financial year, they'd actually identified upgrades to the Buckland Valley Road as a priority. DELP originally planned to construct the sub-base layer of the road pavement, with council to construct the base layer and the seal. DELP, however, was unable to procure and deliver their planned works with their available budget last financial year. Due to the savings on the bridge project, there is available budget from Regional Roads Victoria and DELP, their contributions, that can be used by council to conduct construction of the proposed DELP scope under this contract. Financial implications: the original budget for the Buckland Bridge project was 2.25 million, Regional Roads Victoria contributing 1.5 million and DELP contributing 600,000. With the bridge project being delivered under budget, as mentioned before, there's sufficient allocation remaining within the project budget to deliver the road reconstruction and sealing works through the award of this contract. The adopted budget for this financial year for these works is 385,000. This does not include the scope that DELP were planning to deliver. The total value of the DELP scope and council scope is $585,000. There is sufficient external funding to deliver this project without utilisation of council funds. In consultation, the Tuggerung Land and Waters Council was notified through an advisory notice regarding the proposed works and agreed that the activity is minor public road work within the definition of the Land Use Activity Agreement. The Tuggerung Land and Waters Council has provided their consent for the works to proceed. Funding partners being DELP and Regional Roads Victoria are also supportive of the works. The broader community has been informed of the intent to seal the road, and further updates will be provided to community throughout the works.
Yeah, so moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Janis. Seconded, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Janis.
Where am I? Apologies, yes. Thank you, Ms. Burridge, for that comprehensive report on this. This is a great outcome for our community down there in the Buckland Valley and all the road users and recreational users for that end of the Buckland Valley. It is an area that is highly used, and it is an area of danger, in particular in fire periods. So this will add to the safety of the road, but it's great that we can work with other departments, and they're allowing us to utilise some of those excess funds. But it does help them, but it also helps our community, and I think that's where we can work in partnership with them. This is a good outcome for that. Nice to know that we delivered that bridge under budget, and it also good that our local contractors are involved in the construction of that road. So I would commend that recommendation.
Councillor Vincent.
Yeah, I think Councillor Janis has it covered. A great outcome. Thank you.
Any other comments from councillors on this? No, I'll put it to the vote then. Those in favour of the recommendation? That is carried. Thank you. Item 8.2.2, Dargo High Plains Road, preliminary site establishment. Again, thank you, Ms. Burridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the award of a contract for the preliminary site establishment of the Dargo High Plains Road to enable the seasonal opening. Works will include tree clearing, grading and drain cleaning of 39.25 kilometres of the road. In June 2021, Council was awarded grant funding of $2.6 million from Regional Development Victoria for the upgrading of the Dargo High Plains Road between the Great Alpine Road at Hotham Heights and the Alpineshire municipal boundary. The works relating to this report are required to enable the seasonal opening of the road and will be phase one of a 3-phase project, and the 3 phases are outlined in the report. The tender was advertised on the tender was advertised through the Herald Sun back on the 4th of August 2021, as well as on tenders.net and Council's website. Tender documents were downloaded by 18 prospective tenderers and 6 responses were received by the closing date. Financial and resource implications on this one. The total budget for the Dargo High Plains Road project is $2.6 million, with no financial contribution required of Council. On the consultation side, extensive consultation has been conducted with a wide range of stakeholders who all support the project, and there's a number of stakeholders listed in the report. We have also got letters of support that are being provided by state government land managers being DELP and Parks Victoria. The recommendation is that Council awards contract CT 2104 for Dargo High Plains Road preliminary site establishment to North East Civil Construction based on a tendered schedule of rates and subject to an agreed maximum cost of $180,000 plus GST.
Mover and seconder, Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Keeble. Councillor Nicholas.
The Dargo High Plains Road is an important access road in summer, definitely, and including in potentially in fire time. So great to see some work being done on it. And it's, as Ms. Burridge said, it's a 3-stage process, so this is just number 1, but it will help keep the road in better shape over time. Good work.
Councillor Keeble.
Yeah, no, I concur with Councillor Nicholas. It's a thoroughly strategic road that in our shire that needs to be maintained, and we have good relationships with the Southern Council as well at the other end. So I think between councils it'll be in good shape.
Any other comments by councillors? No, that's all good. Or Councillor Janice, you would like a comment?
Yes, thanks. This is a great road for our tourist industry as well. Yes, it is a significant road in times of strife when there's bushfires in the area, but also it is a tourist road. I've gone along that road not that many months ago or before the snow season, encountering caravans using the road, any number of sort of users there. And I know that Wellington Shire have been over the years trying to get that road upgraded, and once again, you know, we thank the government for that funding to be able to do this, and no cost to our ratepayers, but the benefit to our ratepayers on this side and the other side of the hill will be substantial. And where people are travelling more and more within our state in these COVID times, and more and more are coming to our area. So it'll be good to give them a safer road to travel on.
Thank you, Councillor Janice. Any other comments, councillors? Could I just have some clarity, please, Ms. Burridge? The 2.6 million, has that been granted directly to the Alpineshire, or has it been directed to the improvement of the Dargo High Plains Road?
Mr. Mayor, the funds will be to the Alpineshire to deliver these works to the Dargo High Plains Road.
Excellent. So was there any money also allocated to Wellington for the other side, because this only goes to our boundary?
Could I call on the Acting Director of Corporate to provide some background information here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Elaine. To my knowledge, there haven't been funds granted to the other shire. So the only funds received are for the Alpineshire.
Excellent. So I'm hoping that we just don't get a beautiful road to the end of our boundary and then there's nothing. However, all right, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Bird.
I think our stretch of road in our shire is in worse condition than in the Wellington Shire.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Right, no more comments. I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you, that's been carried. 8.2.3, the proposed discontinuance of a government road, Mount Beauty Airport. Again, thank you, Ms Burridge.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In accordance with Mount Beauty Airport Upgrade Project, Council is in the process of finalising all matters to enable the extension of the airport runway. This requires the existing unused government road traversing the property to be transferred to Council in the first instance. However, prior to the transfer being able to proceed, the government road must first be discontinued pursuant to Schedule 10, Clause 3A of the Local Government Act 1989. The Mount Beauty Airport Upgrade Project has been underway since the Mount Beauty Aerodrome Master Plan was adopted by Council back in 2011. At a council meeting held on the 6th of March 2012, Council resolved to sign and seal the heads of agreement between Alpineshire Council and the then surrounding landowners. Dated February 2012, it's a heads of agreement. As noted in the minutes of the meeting held back on 6th of March 2012, a heads of agreement between Council and the adjoining owners of the Mount Beauty Aerodrome is required to allow the progression of Council's river walk, the extension of the runway and the private development of an air park. This agreement will not bind Council to a planning permit or a rezoning, of which will still be subject to Council's normal planning process. As part of the master plan, the airport runway was required to be extended to be better able to serve the community for aviation recreation, commerce, tourism and emergency response. In order for the runway to be extended, that part of the land currently comprising an unused government road must be acquired by Council. However, the government road first needs to be discontinued. Council has the ability to undertake this discontinuance in accordance with Schedule 10, Clause 3 of the Local Government Act 1989. The unused government road is administered by DELP, which has granted approval in principle for the sale of the Crown land, subject to the final ministerial approval. In the first instance, DELP has requested that Council arrange the discontinuance of the road in accordance with the schedule as mentioned earlier. The discontinuance of the road will also involve publication of such in the Government Gazette. Council must also pay an administration fee. Following the discontinuance of the road and subject to approval of the Minister for Finance, DELP has indicated that the total value of the land, inclusive of all departmental costs, is in the vicinity of $45,000 to allow Council to obtain title to the closed road. Upon completion of the road discontinuance and receipt of the deposit, DELP will proceed to seek final approval of the Minister for Finance. Once the necessary approvals have been obtained, the balance of funds to obtain a Crown grant will be requested. There's a staged process to complete the runway extension. This report relates to stage 1. Other stages to be delivered are as outlined in the report. Finance and resource implications. There is sufficient budget allocation to cover the costs associated with the proposed discontinuance and the ultimate transfer to Council by way of purchase. The anticipated amount payable to DELP is in the vicinity of $45,000 as mentioned earlier. In consultation, the respective adjoining owners of the land upon which the government road encroaches have been consulted on the proposed intentions and have no objection to the proposed road discontinuance. The recommendation is as has been outlined in the report.
Thank you. Could I have a mover? Councillor Keeble, Councillor Vincent, thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks very much. The Mount Beauty Airport and this particular, recommendation is part of many aspects of this job that is allowing us to get to the point where we can, deliver on the extension of the runway and other objectives at the airport. So it's just another piece of the puzzle that's been going on for years, and it's a good recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Vincent,
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
any other comments on this? Straightforward. Thank you. Put this to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. 8.2.4, the draft tree management plan. Again, thank you, Ms Burridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council is carrying out a holistic review of its policies and procedures. A review draft of the tree management plan has been completed. This report relates to the adoption of the draft tree management plan following comprehensive community consultation and a public exhibition period. Council's tree management plan policy number 82 was adopted back in March 2011. A review of this policy has been carried out. Council endorsed the draft tree management plan to be the new draft tree management plan to be placed on public exhibition at the July ordinary council meeting. In accordance with Council's community engagement policy, the draft tree management plan was placed on public exhibition for a period of 28 days and was promoted through Council's website and social media pages, as well as advertised in the local paper. We've received no comments or formal submissions throughout the public exhibition period. As a result, there are no changes to the draft tree management plan. Recommendation is that Council adopts the draft tree management plan and signs and seals the draft tree management plan at the appropriate stage of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms Burridge. Councillors Nicholas and Councillor Hughes. Councillor Nicholas.
Yep. I just wanted to, sorry, I was flicking through, to mention that in the draft tree management plan, there's reference to a tree avenue management and replacement plan, which I think is also incredibly important for the Alpineshire, given that we have so many beautiful ageing trees in our area that are very important to both residents and our visitors, and not to mention the biodiversity that they would harbour as well. And it makes me think of a succession plan, and we definitely need to start thinking about replacing some of those older trees that aren't going to survive, so we don't have to replace them all at once. So great that we've taken that step, and I look forward to seeing the progress as we go.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It kind of surprises me that there was no submissions or comments on this one, to be completely honest with you, being that trees is always a topic of conversation on the social pages in the Bright area. So as Councillor Nicholas said, it's really important that these type of policies are renewed and looked at, and where applicable, amended. In this case, it's being adopted with no changes, but it's you know, this is where I really urge people that when you do have something to say or you want to have involvement, that this is the opportunity to do so. So you know, I'm glad this one is going through the systems, but please be mindful that these documents are applicable to everybody, and they're there for a reason.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. To Acting Director of Assets, Helene Burridge, in the draft tree management plan. Now we have we have some trees in our shire that are under heritage listing or significant trees. I'm assuming this tree management plan also, and this is for our ratepayers that are listening, manages those trees, or are those trees outside this plan?
Can I ask the Acting Director of Corporate to perhaps answer this question?
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. This plan covers all of Council's trees. So whether or not they have a heritage listing, the same principles apply to the way we manage our trees. There's just additional requirements on the heritage listed trees.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments by councillors? I'll make one comment, and I thank Councillor Hughes for pointing it out, that this is very typical of council putting out policies for public comment. So I really would just like to reiterate what Councillor Hughes has actually said, and that is that in order to make informed decisions, we need to be advised. So please, if you're out there in the public and you have got a thought on something, just get back in touch with us regarding any of these policies that are out on display at various times. Having said that, I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That is carried. One other quick clarification point is that when we sign and seal this, it doesn't become the draft tree management plan. It will become the tree management plan. Thank you. 8.2.5, a street sweeper procurement. Again, thank you, Ms. Burridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report actually reflects back on a report that was presented at the August council meeting, and I need to recognise at this point that the report that has been placed onto council's website in relation to this matter for this council meeting, the recommendations are incorrect. I'll talk to the report and then I'll talk to the change in the recommendations for council to consider. So this report relates to the pre-approval to evaluate and purchase a second-hand street sweeper. Through a competitive tender process carried out annually, council currently dry hires a street sweeper for a 12-week period to support autumn leaf pickup, with the vehicle being operated by council staff. The hire cost over recent years has been in the vicinity of $47,000 per annum. Purchase of a new street sweeper has been evaluated, and based on a purchase price of $370,000 and use through the 12-week leaf pickup period only, the payback period has been assessed to be in the range of 6 to 8 years. Purchase of a well-maintained second-hand machine at a competitive price is estimated to bring the payback period down to between 4 and 6 years. An amount of $220,000 has been adopted in the 21-22 financial year capital plant budget. The time frame of which a good quality second-hand street sweeper comes on the market for purchase is short and it's competitive. Available of suitable plant may be through either an online auction or notification from other councils with a set price point. Any suitable machine identified by council will be assessed for its condition, for its age, and have a full service history and be fit for purpose. The change to the recommendations in this report is that council delegates authority to the CEO until 30 June 2022 to purchase a second-hand street sweeper that may become available at auction or by a direct sale process, with a maximum purchase price of $220,000 plus GST and including any sales commission. In the event that a purchase is concluded, the agreed purchase price will be disclosed at a future council meeting.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a second? Councillor Vincent and Councillor Prime. Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems like a very procedural, straightforward one, so I don't have any comments to add. Thank you.
Councillor Prime.
No, just a good move. Really, it sounds very competitive and a good idea to purchase one when the opportunity arises. So I'm all for it.
Okay, any other comments? Any councillors? No? Okay, so the recommendation, we now only have 2 recommendations if those people are reading this council agenda anywhere else. And that is that we are going to delegate authority to the CEO until the 30th of June 2022 to purchase a second-hand street sweeper. And in the event of a successful purchase, the agreed price will then be disclosed in a future council meeting. That's the 2 recommendations. All those in favour? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Burridge. 8.3, the Acting Director of Corporate Performance, Mr. Jeremy. 8.3.1, the draft annual financial statements and performance statement, approval in principle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to present the draft annual financial statements and performance statement for the year ended 30 June 2021 for review and approval in principle. So the financial statements show council's financial performance, its financial position and cash flows against the previous year. And the performance statement provides an overview of council's progress against key performance indicators. So the local government performance reporting framework provides the basis for these indicators, which enables a uniform performance statement across all Victorian councils. So those are essentially the 2 statements that you have in front of you tonight. So the first thing I'd like to note is, so The financial statements are audited by an external auditor, and we're in the process at the moment of finalising the review of those statements with the auditor. Subsequent to the sharing of the draft annual financial statements on Friday with the council agenda, there has been a further item of feedback by the auditor. So I do have a note which I've proposing that we append to the agenda report, which I'd like to read out to you and then explain the detail of that. So the note that I'm proposing to read is based on advice by council's auditors. It is anticipated that the financial statements and performance statements will be adjusted to recognise the amount of the Working for Victoria grant that has not been expended and is required to be repaid in the financial year 21-22. This results in a reduction in the grant income of 0.3 million and the council surplus for the year of the same amount. As a result, council ended the 2020-21 year with a surplus of 4.7 million, which was $2.5 million higher than the $2.2 million surplus projected in the 2020-21 annual budget. So a little bit of explanation around Working for Victoria. So we were very pleased to receive a generous grant, which allowed us to bring on additional staff during the period of the COVID crisis. We filled a number of those positions, and in that process, a number of those people that we brought on for 6-month contracts with Working for Victoria were successful in securing employment elsewhere. So we did lose a couple of those staff through the process, which was a positive thing because those people then went on to secure other employment, which was in the majority of cases, which was longer term or longer tenure than the Employment Council. So the programme achieved its objectives from that perspective. The objective of the programme was to get people back into employment who'd lost their employment through the impacts of COVID. The impact on council, however, was that we were unable to expend the full amount of the grant that was allocated to council. And that has therefore resulted in us being in a position where we will be required in the current financial year to reimburse the gap. So where people left us early and we were unable to fill those positions due to the constraints on the programme, we are required then to return those funds. So that is the adjustment that has been flagged by the financial auditor. So what we're proposing tonight, I've got a recommendation which I'll read out to you here at the start, because this recommendation has also changed to recognise the fact that we're proposing an amendment to those financial statements and the performance statement. So the recommendations to council tonight are that council approves in principle the financial statements and the performance statement for the year ended 30th of June 2021, noting that an adjustment will be made to recognise the amount of the Working for Victoria grant that has not been expended and is required to be repaid in the financial year 2021-22. And the second recommendation remains as previously, that council authorises 2 of the councillors to be nominated to certify the financial statements and performance statements for the year ended 30th of June 2021 on behalf of council, once any amendments or changes are made as requested by the Victorian Auditor General. So that's what we're currently proposing to recommend to council. I've got a couple more points which I'll just cover off here before I revert back to the recommendation. So one of the key points relates to the performance statement. So a number of the performance indicators were impacted by COVID-19 restrictions and extended closures of some of our facilities. So most notably, the utilisation of our aquatic facilities has fallen compared to the previous year, from 2.24 to 1.94 visits per capita. So that's as a result of closures that were required due to the COVID restrictions. And also active library members were slightly lower than in previous years, which dropped from 18.4% to 16.2%. We did implement a click and collect service, which permitted to operate through parts of those years. So that mitigated some of the drop that we would have seen otherwise. So that's the performance statement. In summary, draft financial statements and performance statement for the year show that council is financially sustainable and that council services are being delivered within the expected parameters. COVID-19's had minimal financial impact, as a number of staff that were stood down from the closed facilities we were able to deploy elsewhere. So I'll revert back to the recommendations. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to read through those recommendations once again?
I think so. Yes, please, Mr. Jeremy.
Okay, so recommendation number 1 is that council approves in principle the financial statements and the performance statement for the year ended 30 June 2021, noting that an adjustment will be made to recognise the amount of the Working for Victoria grant that has not been expended and is required to be repaid in the financial year 21-22. That's the first recommendation. Second recommendation is that Council authorises 2 of the councillors to be nominated this evening to certify the financial statements and performance statement for the year ended 30th June 2021 on behalf of Council, once any amendments or changes are made as requested by the Victorian Auditor General.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent. Councillor Nicholas.
Okay, so Councillor Vincent, myself and Mayor Forsyth attended the Audit and Risk Committee meeting today, where we had a really constructive meeting with both the auditors and the council officers and the audit committee, and looked at both the financial report, discussed the note and the change that Mr. Jeremy's raised, and looked at the performance information. And I commend both the supportive audit committee and our phenomenal staff. The financial papers have stepped up incredibly since I was last on the audit committee. I think it's mostly, it's got a lot to do with new accounting standards, but it also reflects that the financial officers that we have working with the Alpineshire are committed and competent, and it's pretty impressive. So thank you and congratulations. So I have absolutely no concern at putting forward these papers and the performance statement for our annual report.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I absolutely concur with Councillor Nicholas, and to attend the meeting this morning, going into even further detail into those financial reports to see the incredibly sound position that the council is in financially, considering the challenges over the last 18 months, is a real, just very confidence inspiring. So I second everything that Councillor Nicholas has said, and well done to the financial management team and executive for keeping us in a very strong position.
Any other councillors like to make comments? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to firstly thanks Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent, and Mayor Forsyth for being on the committee and attending the audit and finance committees. There's a lot of extra work involved in those meetings, so thank you. And I feel well briefed about where we are as a council and as a council, and we are in a good shape. So yeah, I'm quite comfortable with that. And thanks to Will Jeremy for the explanation around the variance there. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate that. You know, auditors have been pretty busy over COVID. It's hard to get into shires, so things are taking a little bit more time with auditors as well, and that's okay. That's the world we live in at the moment. Thank you.
Any other councillors like to make comments? No, all quite comfortable. I will put these recommendations to the vote then, please, making note that there is a note in recommendation 1. Those in favour? Thank you, that's carried.
Mr. Mayor, a point. Could I ask you to nominate the 2 councillors who will certify the financial?
Oh, certainly, yes. Could we? Could I? I'll ask for the simplest way I think to do this is for the people that are sitting currently on the finance committee, if they are prepared to be the authorised councillors, would they please raise a hand? Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mr. Jeremy?
It does. Just a procedural point. I wonder whether you're required to vote on that as it being a recommendation with the...
I think, okay then, because we actually got the recommendation through before we'd authorised 2 councillors. I agree with you. Can I have a show of hands, please, from councillors to approve those 2 councillors, Councillors Nicholas and Councillor Vincent? Thank you. Carried. Procedure correct. Thank you. Right, item 8.3.2, draft Alpineshire Council Climate Action Plan and Position Statement. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the draft Alpineshire Council Climate Action Plan and the Climate Action Position Statement for 2021 to 2024. Worth noting that whilst it says that it's a draft, we are presenting for Council to adopt these as final documents this evening. Draft Climate Action Plan has been developed to document Council's commitment to climate change mitigation by reducing greenhouse gas emissions from Council's corporate operations to net zero by 2023. The Climate Action Position Statement contains a summary of the key information from the Draft Climate Action Plan, and both contain actions for delivery through the years 2021 to 2024, and we plan to review them again in 2024. Worth noting is that the Victorian Climate Change Act 2017 sets a long-term greenhouse gas emissions reduction target for the state of net zero emissions by 2050. So through adoption of Council's Climate Action Plan as presented, Council will be committing to a target which is more ambitious than that required to support the emissions reduction target of the Act. Also worth noting, emissions from Council's 3 main closed landfill sites at Porpunka, Myrtleford and Mount Beatty have been accounted for in the figures within the Climate Action Plan. Council does not account for the collection and disposal of waste outside the Shire. So Council doesn't operate any active landfill sites. Council's municipal waste is collected and disposed of outside the Shire, and the expectation is that those recipients of that waste will be accounting for the greenhouse gas emissions that results from the waste at the point of receipt. Adoption of the Draft Climate Action Plan as presented does not commit Council to additional unbudgeted expenditure in the current financial year. However, it should be noted that there is commitment required in 2022, 23 and beyond in order to achieve the net zero target by July 2023 as proposed. So I've outlined in the report the commitment will be required in the following year, and that will go through the normal budgeting process of Council. One thing I'd like to clarify here, I've said purchase of a single electric vehicle for Council's fleet. So that what I mean by that is the first electric vehicle for Council's fleet, and then there will be subsequent purchases after that. So in order to achieve the target by July 2023, we need a single electric vehicle in the fleet, but it's not intended to stop at that point. We ultimately foresee that we'll have an electric fleet, a fleet vehicles through Council at some point into the future as we replace the existing fleet. So the recommendation to Council tonight is that Council adopts the draft Alpineshire Council Climate Action Plan 2021-24 and the Climate Action Position Statement for 2021-24.
Thank you. We're moving to seconder. Councillor Nicholas, Councillor Vincent. Thank you. Councillor Nicholas.
I know all the councillors already know, but I'm still going to say I think this is an absolutely fabulous step that the Alpineshire Council takes control of and is reducing greenhouse gas emissions that we can directly manage, particularly in light of the most recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change August 2021 report, where there's a suggestion that, or very likely that that 1.5 degree increase in global air temperature will be reached early in 2030. So it's really important that people do as much as they can. This is 10 years earlier than their last report suggested. So we're starting to see, I guess, that there really is a need to deeply and quickly reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in particular that people release into the atmosphere. So fabulous initiative from the Alpineshire. And although we're not accounting for all of the waste that we collect in the Alpineshire, some of the work that we're doing is helping to reduce that waste, and we will be eventually introducing a FOGO service, etc., a food and organic waste collection service. So that will help to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that somebody else has to account for. So little steps at a time, but this is a big step, particularly with the renewable energy. So it's fabulous to see. Thank you everybody who's worked towards it, and I look forward to it rolling out. Can't wait to drive the electric car.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Jeremy. And yeah, to build on what Councillor Nicholas has said, I agree. I think it's a really fantastic document to finally have on the table for us. And I commend Sarah Buckley and the team for what they've put together and the amount of work that over a long period of time that has gone into that. I suppose just to add, when I reflect on the conversations with community back last year during the election period and spoke to so many Alpineshire residents and community members, this was a key topic and a key focus, and I hope and I feel that out there our community will be really pleased to see this go forward, and it's just a great step in the right direction, so well done.
Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree, Councillor Vincent. I think this type of action plan and initiative is coming clearly out as the lead by example. Start somewhere, and if you know, I think that it's a really good step moving forward.
Any other councillors? Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, the Climate Action Plan and position statement says that we will have, you know, 0 greenhouse gas emissions by July 2023. I just want that to ring a little bit because I'm not sure that people thought that that was going to happen that soon. But it shows, you know, people what you can do in the current, you know, parameters that we live in by purchasing, you know, clean green energy. And, you know, the fact that we have other areas of our, you know, governments at zero net at 2050, the year 2050, and the fact that we can do it in this particular neck of the woods at 2023, I'd urge all different levels of government to, you know, continue to rethink the time frame that they have in reducing those emissions. So thanks to everyone and the team for where we get, and it's a great start. Thank you.
Councillor Janice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I concur with all the statements said by my fellow councillors. You know, lead by example. If you're going to whinge about it, then let's do something about it and get it fixed. But it's not only leading by example for our community, which are concerned about our environment. We're leading by example to other agencies and governments. And if we can, as a small rural council, can achieve these type of targets without expending too much of ratepayers' money going forward, then I'm sure larger councils and other governments can do the same. And we're still working with industry, but we need to now project what we're doing back to our community and have plans in place where we can work with them to reduce it in their own living, in their own homes, in their own businesses. That's the next important step for us. How we run our events, reducing landfill waste in all of those areas, planting more trees, whatever it's going to take, and it's not going to cost us a lot of money to do that. We talk about a tourist destination, clean and green, environment. Well, we lead by example, and people want to come, and when they do come, they will respect our environment for what we're trying to do. So that's also important in that leading by example. So I agree with everything what my councillors, fellow councillors have said, and I just, even the groups I'm involved with, just when they pre-read some of the reports, couldn't believe that we could do this in such a short time. So well done to everybody.
Councillor Prime.
Yeah, I just think Councillor Janice hit on a really good point there. It's achieving these targets, but being very mindful of ratepayers' money at the same time. And I think everyone's keen to achieve that balance. So terrific job to the team. And to be honest, when I read 2023 the first time, I thought it was a typo because it is extremely ambitious. And I just think good on a small rural council like ourselves for having a really good crack at this. So I really do think we're setting a good standard here.
Could I take up, sorry, Councillor Nicholas?
I was just going to do a quick summary, but maybe you would.
I'll do well, Councillor, sorry. I was going to make a comment and then I'll get the CEO, Mr. Bird, to make a comment, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Nicholas, because you can actually summarise. My comment was taking up on Dr. Keeble, Councillor Keeble and Councillor Janice's comments, was that I was wondering whether or not you would like to commission the CEO to write to our state and federal counterparts, members, saying, if we can do it, why can't you? Along those lines, saying that we've adopted a climate action plan and that we are standing by what we're saying, put it that way. So I'm just wondering whether councillors would like us to charge the CEO to do something along those lines. Would I see some nods? Yeah, nods, and Councillor Dennis.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. We're dealing with this particular motion at this point in time.
Certainly, it's all part of it.
That may be a separate motion.
It may not even need to be a motion.
Well, I don't believe it need to be part of this particular motion myself.
I had about 6 nods before that, Mr. Councillor Janis, so we'll carry on, and I'll get the CEO. He had his hand up as well. Thank you.
I don't know if it's proper that the CEO speaks before we make a decision.
If he's got a point of clarification, I believe it is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Janis, it's just in relation to the climate action plan, not in relation to the matter raised by Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that in the climate action plan, we account for emissions from our closed landfills, and that's over 20% of our emissions. And that's not common for councils accounting for that. And the reason we have accounted for that is if we don't account for that and offset that and manage that and reduce that, no one else is going to, because they're our landfills. And that's why we believe it's appropriate that we do account for those and put actions in place to mitigate that and offset that where we're unable to do so. So I just wanted to raise that, as well as the ambitious 2023 target. We're also including those emissions from closed landfills.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Councillor Nicholas, you've got a wrap up if you like.
Okay, it'll be very quick. I really like the way Councillor Keeble said 2023. I just want to let that ring there, because it is ambitious, but I also wanted to point out that we're doing it initially with offsets, and we will be reducing the amount we need to pay for offsets because we're continuing to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and manage things like the closed out landfill methane emissions, etc. So 2023 will probably be paying the most we'll ever have to pay for offsets, and that will continue to reduce over the years. So that's why we can do it. And I think it's fantastic that we're starting to really walk the talk, and that leadership and extending into the community is such an important part of what we're doing, that I really look forward to seeing that start to have some ripple effect. So,
thank you.
thanks everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. I'll put this recommendation to the vote. Those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you. That's been carried. Item 8.3.3, the Bright River Pool. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present to Council the key findings and recommendations from a recent review of the Bright River Pool operation. I provided a bit of background in the report, but I'm just going to pick up on one particular point which I think is important. So during the 2020-21 summer season, so that's the last summer season, Council introduced a new tool that improved the reporting of incidents at our seasonal pools. And key insights from the first 31 days of lifeguard supervision were as follows. 24 incidents were reported, so that was an average of 3 incidents per day. And for comparison, we had a total of 16 incidents across the Mount Beauty and the Myrtleford outdoor pools throughout the whole outdoor pool season of 141 days. So quite a significant number of pool incidents that were reported at the Bright River Pool. Of those 94 reported incidents, 65 of those were assisted rescues. So that required someone, a lifeguard, to go into the water to assist with the rescue of someone who'd got themselves into difficulty, which was an average rate of 2 per day. And 60 of these assisted rescues occurred at the jumping platform or the slide. So this feedback prompted us to carry out a further risk assessment. So we periodically carry out risk assessments of the river pool operations, as all operations that council carries out. But this prompted us to carry out a further risk assessment. And one of the actions we took as a result of the number of incidents and the risk assessment was to commission a review by Life Saving Victoria of our operations of our outdoor pools, the river pools. So Life Saving Victoria is considered to be an industry authority on public safety at inland waterways. So probably in our view, the best placed people to be able to give us a thorough review and an understanding of where we're exposed to risk and the management and mitigation measures that we have in place. In the report, I've presented some feedback on the findings from Life Saving Victoria. So what was interesting was they commended council's approach to managing the site, and the commitment to safety has been demonstrated on this site. However, what they did find was a significant finding in relation to the slide in the Bright River Pool. And what they noted was that the slide in the Bright River Pool is not compliant with the current Australian standard. So the slide was installed prior to the Australian standard being put in place. If you were to assess the slide against that standard today, that you'd find that it doesn't comply with that standard. Life Saving Victoria recommended that we seek some legal advice to understand what council's actions should be, given that understanding now that that piece of infrastructure doesn't meet the requirements of the Australian standard. And what we learned through that process of seeking some legal advice is that essentially there's an expectation from the community that council carries out a reasonable duty of care at the sites that it operates. And knowing that the slide is not compliant with the current Australian standard, if there was an incident to that site, it would be reasonably found that council had not fulfilled a reasonable duty of care to the public of that site. So that's a key point that is noted in the report that results from the work that Life Saving Victoria has done and our subsequent investigations based on their response. So based on the feedback from Life Saving Victoria and the advice that we've sought subsequent to that, what we're recommending is as noted in the report here. So the first point is that where reasonably practical, we implement the recommendations of Life Saving Victoria's Bright River Pool report. And it's notable that with the exception of the slide, the other recommendations that Life Saving Victoria have presented to us, we believe are readily manageable, either directly implementing the recommendation or finding alternative which achieves the same outcome. The second recommendation is that we take reasonable measures to respond to the other risks that were identified through the risk assessment process. And again, we believe these are all manageable, either directly to address the risk or to put in place some measures to mitigate it. The third recommendation is that council removes the slide located at the Bright River Pool prior to the start of the next managed pool season, prior to November 2021. And the fourth recommendation is that council progresses an investigation into replacement of the slide with a compliant alternative. So that's a slide which does meet the current Australian standard. What we've noted here is a recommendation that we report back to the December 2021 Ordinary Council meeting with the conclusion of that investigation and the proposed way forward. What I will provide for clarification is that council staff are actively seeking to establish a compliant alternative slide. So we have been approaching manufacturers and we have been gaining some traction with those manufacturers in understanding what might be possible at that location. We don't as yet have a confirmed solution, but we're certainly actively working towards that position.
Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations, please? Councillor Keeble and Councillor Vincent. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it's incumbent on the Shire to make sure that citizens are safe to start with. That's part of the purpose here. And, I know that the Shire and ourselves are committed to finding the best possible solution. I'll leave it at that because I know there's probably other comments, so I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy. I think for those watching in the community and noting that there's already been quite a lot of community feedback through social media today as it made its way to the news. I suppose I want to share that absolutely when council was briefed on this, it's as residents, we're all upset to hear that the very beloved iconic slide doesn't now meet safety standards. That's something that is very sad to residents, as I can hear through the feedback on social channels. It's also, from what Mr. Jeremy said, the key point that advice about duty of care and the non-compliance and the implications for any future incidents, to me, it leaves to the recommendation 3 and 4 of removing it and trying to seek an alternative. I feel like there's sort of no other option with that advice. It is sad, but we're going to do our absolute best to look for an alternative replacement. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Nicholas.
I'm going to put it in really simple words. Once we know about a danger, a risk, we have to do something about it. And concur with Councillor Vincent, and indeed I know Councillor Hughes has already expressed her concern, and I share it, that taking out this beautiful iconic thing that lots of people have a lot of fun on is really hard, but we are working hard to get a replacement, and it won't. I guess one of the issues is that it's not an easy thing to replace. So we're working on it.
Councillor Hughes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just for those watching at home. This is the silver slide, as we call it growing up. The silver slide, not the green rotary slide, but the silver slide. There's been essentially some things happen to this slide over the years to make it safer, because I can guarantee you the things that we did as children were not safe on this slide. And I completely get it. It is really sad to see it go. We are making a massive effort, the council staff making a massive effort to try and find something that is compliant. Once we know about something like this, it can't be ignored. And unfortunately, it is something that is an uproar in and around town. But you know what? If something bad was to happen in this, then you'd turn around and you point your finger and say, why did council not do something about it? So Mr. Jeremy has explained how many incidents that there are over that period where there's actually somebody there and manning it. And that's not counting the things that happen outside of that as well, because since I've been on council term, there's been many people come to me to go, what can we do? This place, I've been in an assisted rescue. I've seen things happen. So it is happening outside of these manned times as well. I think the key thing here is we don't want to be the fun police. It's not anything about that. That's the words that are being thrown out at the moment on social media. It's, finding that alternative. And if you've got an opinion, come talk to us about it. If you've got ideas, if you've got avenues, if you know people that have this somewhere else, help us out as well. It's not always to fall on the hands of 4 or 5 people that are looking into these things. It's about the safety of everybody involved. So as much as it hurts, and we did have a massive discussion on it, but as much as it does hurt that the silver slide will be no longer, I have to agree that there's a certain level of stupidity, I suppose, by those that are ignoring the fact that these dangers do occur.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Yeah, Councillor Janice.
Thank you. I just thank my fellow councillors for putting all those cases forward, and for Mr. Jeremy too, for that succinct report. It's a very important issue. That the protection of life is extremely important, and we all will agree on that. Everybody will agree on that. And it's not just life; it's also other injuries that occur as a result of a near drowning or something similar. That's a lifelong injury, and I'm committed, as are the other councillors and staff, to try and find a safe compliant alternative to that, hopefully for this coming season. But we have to work within the constraints of what's out there. And as Councillor Hughes has said, if you do know somebody out there, an engineering firm who is, or whatever, that can make a compliant slide, well, get in contact with us and we'll work together with people. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Prime, did you have anything to say on this?
No, I think everyone spoke very well. I agree with Councillor Hughes. It's just once we're aware of these issues, we really can't ignore it. And just to reiterate that we're working really, really hard to fix the problem rather than just completely get rid of the slide and not replace it. So efforts are really being put towards that.
Thank you. Back to you, Councillor Keeble, for a wrap. Any more to say?
No, I think it's all been said. Concur. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. I will put the 4 recommendations to the vote then, please. Those in favour? Thank you. It's carried. Good discussion. 8.3.4, 14 McGeehan Crescent, Myrtleford. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report relates to the purchase of 14 McGeehan Crescent, Myrtleford for the purpose of relocating Council's Myrtleford Works Depot from the current site at 190 Standard Street in Myrtleford. So since the report that we presented to the Council meeting in July, we've carried out a thorough due diligence process on this site. So we've had our planning and buildings team. So the planning team's provided advice, which I've outlined in this report, confirming that we will require a planning permit for this development of this site, given its proximity to the adjacent residential land. However, we're confident that the purpose that we're proposing for the site is aligned with the purpose of the industrial zone, and therefore we will be successful in securing a planning permit with conditions which are not more onerous than the current use of the site at Standish Street. Our building inspectors inspected all the buildings on site and they're in a variety of conditions. We've got a main shed which is in good condition and we would propose to keep that. And the remaining buildings are in different conditions, some of which will likely require demolition. And we have identified the presence of asbestos containing materials in some of those buildings as well, which is something to be aware of. We've had an assessment for potential ground contamination. So that's included taking boreholes on the site, particularly one where there were previously some underground storage tanks. So what we've established is that there are no contaminants on that site that we can identify which exceed the levels that would be allowable for its use as an industrial site, as a depot or warehouse, as we're proposing. So that's positive. We've also had an inspection of the electrical supply system to the site, and we've identified the works that will be required to bring the electrical systems up to a safe standard for occupation and use as a warehouse and a depot. So we've done a thorough due diligence process. Apart from the planning permit requirement, which we probably hadn't anticipated, we haven't flagged any particular surprises with the site that we feel we need to bring it to the attention of council, and I've documented all the findings in the report that I've presented today.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Keeble. Councillor Janus.
Thank you. This is a good outcome for our council staff and our community. The current site has been there for ever since I can remember, and is now really being encroached by housing. Previously, in my previous time in council and as mayor, people would ring me to say they complain about the council staff starting at 7 o'clock or 7:15 and they're on the job and it's upsetting their holiday, whatever. But, what a great team we've got that they're out actually on the road 15 minutes after they start. So if they're down there in the industrial estate with everybody else starting at that time, and I know the site quite well, it is a good site. And is suitable. I think it's a little bit smaller than what we've got, but at the moment. But all those things will be, I'm sure, sorted out in the planning. I don't know who wishes the planning permit, Mr. Jeremy.
My understanding, Councillor Janus, is that council would process and issue the planning permit. Council's planning team.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a conflict there. We don't outsource that or anything.
My understanding is no, we don't. We don't have a conflict and we don't outsource it.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's a great price. We still maintain that asset up there in Standish Street for into the future. And I know there are some flooding issues from a nearby water course. And so, you know, forward planning in relation to all that probably really is time for us to leave that one and move to a new location. I understand the staff are quite happy, but if this does occur, it puts it all back into a nice little box down there in that end of town. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The only question I will have it, but I concur with Councillor Janis and all that he said, that it's a good bit of land to buy and move the depot there. I feel well briefed. We've talked about this quite a lot, this particular purchase. And Councillor Janis mentioned about future, just in regards to this particular land in McGean Crescent. And I know we don't have crystal balls, but is this a 10-year thing? Is it a 20 years? Is it a 5-year thing, like the industrial land in that area? Is there any ideas around how long we'll be in this site for? Is this a long-term site?
So for the purpose of the assessment we've carried out, we've made an assumption this is the site into the foreseeable future.
Okay.
So now I'm aware that there's work that the strategic planning team is doing around the land development strategy, and that that will kind of work through the process. Unclear whether it will have implications for this site, but at this stage I'm not aware of any, but who knows where that study will lead us. But at this stage we've planned on the basis that we're permanently relocating the site out of Standish Street and down into the industrial area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other councillors like to make some comments or have questions for clarification? No? Okay. I've just got one clarification, and that is for those out there in community that are seeing the actual purchase price here, knowing what land is worth in that area, it is important to note that in recommendation 1, that the land itself is actually a restricted community use. So it cannot actually be purchased for industrial site. So that, I think, is an important issue that needs to be noted. Having said that, Councillor Janis, you have the floor again.
No, thank you.
Okay. I'll put this these 2 recommendations to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. Item 8.3.5, the draft planning compliance policy. Thank you, Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Purpose of this report is to present the draft planning compliance policy to Council prior to a period of public consultation. Planning compliance is legislated under the Planning and Environment Act 1987. And Section 14A of the Act places an obligation on Council to enforce the Act and the planning scheme. Council doesn't currently have a policy that outlines to the public its approach to planning compliance. The draft planning compliance policy aims to address this gap and provides information on Council's consistent approach to planning compliance, which is accessible to members of the public. So we've assessed the draft planning compliance policy against the provisions of Council's community engagement policy, and we've determined that there may be public interest in the draft planning compliance policy, as it describes a service which is being provided to the community. So on this basis, we're recommending that the draft policy be placed on public exhibition and submissions sought from the community. So the recommendation tonight is that Council endorses the draft planning compliance policy, invites public submissions on the draft planning compliance policy with submissions closing on the 13th of October 2021, and considers a recommendation to adopt the planning compliance policy at a future Council meeting.
Thank you. Have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hughes and Councillor Vincent. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is kind of reiterating what I said before. This is coming out for public consultation, so consult. That's basically all I've got. This is, planning is one of the biggest, probably most contentious issues that are discussed about council. So I really think that by coming out to the public, it's allowing people to have their say. These type of policy documents are really important. And I think that this is your time. Have your say.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel that this document is a really important one for the community in terms of creating clarity and transparency of compliance. And as Mr. Jeremy pointed out, we haven't had one. And as a councillor, a lot of the phone calls and feedback from the community I get, and it might be the same for other councillors, is often from people reporting or being upset about other people not complying with things, and there's a lot of different interpretations and frustrations out there, and it's my hope that this document really has an opportunity to clear that up and give clear guidance to officers and to our community. So well done, and everyone get on and give your feedback. Thank you.
Other councillors, any comments? No. Thank you. In that case, Councillor Hughes, any more to say? No. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. 8.3.6, a planning application for 3236 Coronation Avenue, Bright. Mr. Jeremy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application proposes an 8-lot stage subdivision at 32 to 36 Coronation Avenue in Bright. So the stages, there'll be 2 proposed stages to the development. Stage 1 has 4 lots in it, the largest lot size being 651 metres squared and the smallest being 464 metres squared. And the second stage also has 4 lots, with the largest lot size being 1767 metres squared and the smallest lot size being 491 metres squared. So the application was advertised in accordance with Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Notice of the application was sent to the surrounding landholders and occupiers, and a sign was displayed on the site. We received 1 objection, which was maintained through the process, and I've outlined in the council report what the grounds were for that objection and what council officers' response were to those objections. So. In summary, the application has been assessed against all relevant planning policy and decision guidelines. The application is considered consistent with the Alpine Planning Scheme, and the recommendation of council's officers is that it should be approved for the following summarised reasons. So the proposal generally meets the relevant provisions of the state and local planning policy framework, General Residential Zone Schedule 1, the particular provisions, including public open space contributions and subdivision, bushfire planning, clause 56, which is residential subdivision, and the decision guidelines at clause 65. The proposal is considered to meet the adjoining and surrounding subdivision pattern, which is a mix of varying lot sizes located within a 200-metre radius of the subject site. For the recommendation tonight,
I have a proposer, Councillor Janis. I have a seconder, Councillor Nicholas. Was there anything more that you wanted to get from Mr. Jeremy, Councillor Janis?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I've been reasonably well briefed on this in the past, and it's now come before council for a decision that's probably a little bit similar in some ways to what's happened up in Park Street, where we've had a lot of near the police station there, smaller lots. That's becoming more and more prevalent in our shire, but depending on how the houses and that are built on those lots, I know the community are concerned that we have smaller lots and bigger houses, which takes away from, or could take away from, the amenity and niceness of an area. But that's not what this is about. This is approving this, on a note that there's a couple of nice big blocks at the rear of all of that. So, and there is a current shortage of housing in our shire and in Bright particularly. So we do need it. So I have no trouble with being in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Nicholas.
Councillor Janice said it all. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Councillor Keeble.
Have we read out the recommendation?
Yes, basically, that there is a notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With these smaller blocks, you know, it is, again, a topic of conversation that comes up a lot with these smaller subdivisions happening. It's not uncommon in this area for these block sizes. It's not like it's being thrown in amongst other ones that aren't this small. Like, this is something quite commonly seen in and around the areas around Bright. So, you know, some of them are on the smaller side, but you know what, there are blocks in our shire that are smaller than this as well. So keeping that in mind as well.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to make comments? Back to you, Councillor Janus. Any final word?
No, nothing further. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Put this to the vote. Those in favour of this recommendation to grant a planning permit? Thank you. It's been carried. All right, I'm just flicking through the conditions on this planning permit at the moment. Right, up to item 9, informal meetings of councillors. There's a recommendation that the summary of informal meetings of councillors for July and August 2021 be received. There are briefing sessions and 1 strategic planning session. Could I have a move and a second? So moved. Councillor Keeble, seconded. Councillor Hughes. Those in favour? Thank you. Item 10, general business, starting with Councillor Nicholas.
I don't have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Prime.
No, none from me. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 things. One is with this glorious spring weather that we have been receiving of late. It is warmer. I know that my kids' little chicken legs have been out in shorts and t-shirts. So people are going to be embracing it more so the more it happens. So please be mindful around waterways at the moment. We have had a lot of water come through and there is the runoff of the snow as well that comes off the hills. So the rivers are running rapidly and even if they do calm down a little bit, they're still running quite fast underneath. So please be really mindful when you're out and about and playing outside and things like that, that those waterways and the edges of the banks and things like that can change when there has been rapid water. So please be mindful of that. And the other thing I wanted to point out is there are 5 days left to put in submissions for the Youth Awards within the Alpineshire. So the Youth Awards are really a really big thing and have been around for a long time, recognising the contributions and achievements of the youth aged 12 to 21 in our Alpineshire. And I think that with everything that's going on at the moment and the things that our kids are enduring at the moment with having to homeschool and the ever-changing and evolving ways of how we do things, I really think that something like this is just amazing and could be a really good pick-me-up to get someone that might be in a bit of a slump and recognising what it is that they're contributing to our community. So I was lucky enough to be a Youth Award recipient back in the day. I won't tell you how long ago because I couldn't remember. But I really think that these type of things, especially at the moment, is a really big value add. So if you haven't had a look, you've got 5 days. I'm happy to share it again on my socials, get people out there, get their names recognised and get through that process because it's a really valued and warranted process. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. That was a good plug. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two quick ones as well. A reminder, because I think everyone is out planting and getting things in order for spring, that the 1st of September, there was a change to netting regulations over trees. So if you're not sure what's allowed and what's safe for all the bird life and everything, just jump on Wildlife Victoria's website and all the information's on there. A lot of people don't know about that, and yeah, just unsuspectingly put netting on that's quite dangerous to our native birds, and so have a look at that. And the other one is just a thank you to our community, because I know how hard, well, personally, how hard the lockdown, especially the last few weeks, have been with everything shut, and on my few outings to the shop to get our essential items, I've certainly noticed the Bright community very bubbly and still, smiling through their masks and getting on with it and supporting each other. So just to thank you, it's a pleasure to live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start with, it's now September, and the council, we're still doing Zoom meetings here like this once a month for our ordinary council meetings. And I remember when we first started it off last year, and we were all sort of finding our way. And I'd just like to say that I think that everyone is doing a great job. I think we've got this nailed in regards to the way we present and how we have the conversation. So well done to everyone involved, and to the team that put it up on YouTube and all that sort of stuff behind the scenes. So it's looking back at where we've come in the last 18 months with doing these meetings on Zoom. It's come a long way, so well done. I wanted to shout out the council plan is still out there for community consultation, so make sure you have a look. If you're not sure, come and talk to a councillor for any clarification. Make sure you put your feedback in, okay, because we need that feedback. And sort of a bit of, along the lines of Councillor Vincent in regards to all those happy faces she's seeing down the street. I would say also to people, we're getting to a different end of the COVID space in regards to where we're heading the next few months. There's a lot of it in the media. Just be mindful of being kind to each other. Everyone's entitled to their different opinions of what they think, but it's a matter of being respectful and kind to each other as well. So continue to do that. That's me. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Janus. You're on mute, Councillor Janus.
Yeah, great general comments by everybody. Last night I attended a Zoom meeting in relation to a community-based solution from Bright in relation to the housing and availability and affordability. A great initiative by all those people concerned. And I asked people if they can be involved, please be involved. If you've got a residence, if you've got something that you can put out on the market in the short or longer term, we need housing for our key workers, for our essential workers. And this is a great initiative led by our community for the community. So I think through social media you can find out who those people are up there, and offer your assistance if you possibly can. I want to give them a plug because we have a team within council that are also sort of trying to work on this, but we need to work in partnership with the business people to get a nice solution. We don't want people living under bridges and in places where it's just not suitable for families. So I'm sure as a community we can do something about that. Tough.
Thank you, Councillor Janus. Councillor Hughes, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Councillor Janus, there were a couple of us on that, and I agree with you. This is a community-led initiative recognising the work that's being undertaken already by various different groups, and including the Alpineshire Council. So I think it's really good. I think there's some fantastic people leading the way on this one. But like Councillor Janice said, it's trying to capture those that have the skills to be able to lead this moving forward. He did mention that, Councillor Janice mentioned that it is on social media. So if you can look up the Bright Collective, that's what you're looking at in terms of the information that they're going to be using moving forward. And the email is tbcliveworkplay@gmail.com. So shoot them through an email and let them know what you might be able to bring to the table or ideas that you have.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. And just to follow up on that, if anybody missed what Councillor Hughes said, the it's actually a subcommittee running under the auspices of the Chamber of Commerce of Bright. So contact the Chamber of Commerce in Bright if you would like any more information on that. Okay. Item 11, motions for which notice has previously been given. There are none tonight. Item 12, reception and reading of petitions. We don't have any petitions in front of us at the moment. And item 13, documents for sealing. We have 7 documents for sealing tonight. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Vincent and Councillor Nicholas. Those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Then no further business. I will declare this meeting closed at 6:37. Thank you very much for your attendance and look forward to next month and